First time you make a big mistake at work, it might feel like the world's ending. You got that cold sweat, you got sweaty palms, your heart drops, and you don't know what to do next. Just know that this does happen to everyone over their careers, because if you don't have problems, you're not pushing yourself enough. Mistakes are going to happen. There's no one that's perfect. So don't beat yourself up that you made a mistake. The real thing is how you react to the mistake. The absolute worst thing you could possibly do is try to hide it in any way. So there's a few things we're going to go over in this video about how you can manage your mistake and how to protect your reputation while fixing things. The main thing when you make a mistake is to figure out the impact and then go with solutions instead of just problems. So if you have more senior people around you, everyone does, the more senior people will appreciate if you own your mistake, so don't try to hide it in any way. That's very important. You don't hide the mistake, but if you say, hey, this happened, I've put a thing in place so it shouldn't happen again. So earlier in my career, I had a situation I could have handled better where we had sent some data off to a flight test. So flight tests are very expensive. It's a very expensive time to go take an airplane and go do things with it. And it turns out that some file that I had touched had not been ingested properly, and we didn't realize until after the flight test. So this was not a great situation because at first it seemed like we had just wasted all of the money on the flight test because we didn't have the data that we needed. So thankfully, in this particular instance, my saving grace was that the data was being recorded and could be posthumously looked at, so the effort was not completely in vain. But the takeaway here was that, hey, what happened? And it's like, oh, Nelson, you touched this file. What did you do? File that I had tried to get ingested didn't get ingested, nor did it throw any errors or anything. So, in the moment, I didn't really feel like this should have really been my fault. But at the same time, what I did was I made a tool to preclude this issue in the future. So instead of having just a bunch of egg on my face, I saw this as a continuous improvement opportunity to basically write a little tool and say, hey, anyone touching this type of file, take this and make sure that it's being properly ingested. So do you see how I was able to kind of flip it to where it wasn't just, oh, I did something bad, because I found an unwritten feature throw us a bit of a curveball that week. The main takeaway from my little personal story here is that I could have done better, because I did not go right away and say, hey, I don't know if this could have caused the problem, but this is what I did. Right? So I didn't do that. So in this instance, I didn't really hide, but I also didn't really want to take accountability for this problem because this was not something that was written down. So it wasn't like I didn't follow directions. This was just an unwritten feature we didn't know about. So in the end, it worked out okay because we still had the data, but this could have been a lot worse. The main thing here is that you don't want to just go dump the problem or your mistake onto someone more senior's desk. You don't want to do that, right? So if someone comes to me now with a problem and say, hey, I screwed this up. Okay, all right, let's see this as a learning opportunity. What did you screw up? Why did you screw it up? In terms of, did you read the procedure wrong? Was there context that was missing from the procedure we need to include next time? And try to gather some data about it, but don't just say, hey, this is broken. Because that's not very useful. And now I have to go ask a bunch more questions about, okay, it's broken, but like, you need to give me the whole context here. Just saying it's broken or it didn't work is not helpful. So you have to kind of have some sympathy for the other person that you're bringing this to. And if you have some proposed solutions, that's even better. So, hey, I screwed this up, but here's some proposed solutions. How should we move forward? Now you see that's engaging and you've already tried to fix your problem. You've already tried to fix your mistake. See, that's much better than saying, hey, I made a mistake, or even worse, trying to hide something. When it comes to being at work, bad news ages like milk. So really you have to be about it when you know that there's problems or you've made a mistake, especially if it was something that you tactically made the error. You need to own it quickly and then try to move forward with a solution as quick as you can. So just like with my little anecdotal story earlier, when you are trying to come up with ways to put guardrails for you and your team to prevent those future mistakes, you really have to have an open mind and try to come up with, is it going to be a process? Update the SOP? How are you going to implement this? And how are you going to make it so it's low friction enough that it can be carried out every time? One of the main things when you're thinking about these procedure updates is that you're not just throwing a bunch of extra stuff, extra steps that are going to add a bunch of friction and then not be adhered to going forward. You want whatever changes you're making to be as low friction as possible. So thinking about this continuous improvement mindset when you make mistakes is great because you usually can take the mistake, own it, if you own it quickly and say, yep, I screwed up, and here's what we're going to do so this doesn't happen again. This is a much better way for you to approach these mistakes than if you were to try to hide it, because that shows a lack of integrity, which is terrible, right? You have to have integrity, and that's a very easy way to absolutely ruin the trust that you have with the people around you. So if you try to hide some mistake or something, that's really disaster for your reputation and the trust that you've built with your team. So a lot of those reputation and trust things take a really long time to build, and it would be very, very, very in your interests to not blow that trust up by doing something silly like covering up a mistake. I'll leave you in this video with a management quote that is very widely circulated online. That's, "I don't fire people for making mistakes. I fire people for hiding them." So don't hide your mistakes when you make them. Try to come up with some continuous improvement opportunities, and I'll see you at the next one.